I'm really hoping that your listeners can take one or two things away from this about life, business, whatever.
I know they will because I know you well enough, so that's the reason you're sitting here.
Awesome.
Welcome to our podcast, Inspiring Living with me, Mark Candelaria. I'm an architect, blogger, traveler, chef, father, and husband. I'm the founder and now partner of a fabulous 25-person architecture firm specializing in high-end residential architecture, designing amazing homes across the country. We have hosted tours to Italy, Spain, and now Napa over the last 20 years, and in the course of all this, I have met a lot of interesting people who truly inspire me. Our podcast is about all the opportunities that are right there in front of us to inspire living. Yes, we will talk about architecture and design, but every week we will venture into all sorts of topics that will inspire you, teach you, and motivate you to inspire living every day. My guests will include a wide gamut of amazing people, from those in the design industry to clients to real estate professionals, chefs, artists, sports figures, and philanthropists, and people who just flat out get it. Sit back and enjoy, and let's have some fun exploring all the opportunities that are there just waiting for us. Please subscribe and get ready to be inspired every week. Okay, as my dad says, here we go. Because inspiring living is all about the people and the organizations that inspire us, we are excited to have Monogram Appliances as one of our new sponsors. Anytime we do a new kitchen or a kitchen remodel, Monogram Appliances are what we recommend to our client. Their appliances are the definition of luxury, meticulously detailed, using the finest materials and an ownership experience that is second to none. And I'll tell you what, we are excited to have Monogram Appliances trick out our new demonstration kitchen at our office at Candelaria Design. They're going to make that place zoom. I tell you, I'm looking forward to cooking there. I just had the experience of cooking on their appliances at the iconic Life Dine and Design event over at Expressions Gallery. And I'll tell you, that was a fun event, by the way. And using their equipment was spectacular. I mean, I had such confidence, and everything turned out perfectly. So I highly recommend them. This is how Monogram is always thinking ahead and inspiring and elevating the kitchen experience. Because at Monogram, they don't just elevate one thing, they elevate everything. All right, we're ready to do another podcast. I've got another great friend. We've become really great friends over the years. I mean, we started out as business acquaintances, right?
Yeah, totally.
But it's kind of morphed into that. And then, of course, you just brought me whiskey and glasses and cigars. So now we're best friends.
Well, nothing like a Spain trip to really bring you close together, right?
Right. So then we'll get into that. So I've got Kent Welborn here from Northwestern Mutual, and I'll let you say your title because that's a mouthful.
It is. So I'm a business planning specialist and wealth management advisor.
Okay. So
that is a mouthful.
That is a mouthful. So you've helped me a ton. You still are helping me a ton. And I think I'm very fortunate. I've worked with a number of people like you. And I would have to say that of all the years I've dealt with your profession, you were definitely the best that I've worked with.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark.
Very, very good. So
I appreciate that.
So we'll get into that. So where are you? Are you from Phoenix originally?
Yeah, no, actually I'm not. And well, first of all, I want to say thanks, Mark, for the opportunity to speak to your listeners.
Absolutely.
And I'm really hoping that your listeners can take one or two things away from this about life, business, whatever.
I know they will because I know you well enough. So that's the reason you're sitting here.
Awesome. So to give you the story of Kent Welborn, so I was born in 1974, Knoxville, Tennessee. I was only there for a couple of months. And my mom, her health wasn't that great. She had lung issues. And, back then in the 70s, you've been in Arizona a long time, Mark, and way back then, the air quality was a lot different. They'd send people out here, right? So
I don't know if I'd send anyone out here.
I know, right? Nobody's coming out here for the air quality these days. So my family moved out here, and they moved to Tucson, actually, not Phoenix.
Okay.
And so I grew up in Tucson, modest, working class neighborhood on the east side. Went to Palo Verde High School down there. Yeah, and I got to tell you, I wasn't the best student per se. One of the things I learned early on is that I could cheat on an eye exam because I didn't want to wear glasses. So I learned to memorize the eye exam. So what ended up happening is I went through my entire school with really not being able to see the blackboard. So by the time I got into high school, I really gravitated towards one thing that didn't need a blackboard at all, and that was theater. And so it was in high school that I really developed my love of theater. And so to kind of bring it full circle as to how I got here in Phoenix, I went on this trajectory that when I was sitting there in Tucson, I realized that, hey, if I'm going to be the next Brad Pitt or Tom Cruise, like those guys, you don't know what university they went to, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so
it doesn't matter.
Who needs to go to college?
Right.
So I picked up, literally at the age of 19, 20, I took 2 suitcases, $800, and I went out to California. And I was there for a couple years, and then I went out to New York for 4 years. And
so how old were you then, roughly?
So I was about 20 when I went to California, and then when I went to New York, I was probably about 21.
Okay.
And I needed to pay the bills.
Yeah.
So I ended up being a bike messenger.
You told me this story.
Yeah, right?
This is a great story.
Now these are rather antiquated in this day and age because everybody uses email and other ways of communication.
So what year was this, roughly?
This was, I want to say this was probably 1996.
Okay.
And so here I am in New York City riding my bike around. And, the lifestyle of a bike messenger is a little crazy, too, because you're just living on the edge, dodging traffic, breaking all kinds of laws, right?
Yeah.
So it got to a point, though, where, and kind of a bit of a sad story, not kind of, it is a sad story. One of my friends who was a bike messenger, I came upon an accident he was in that killed him.
Oh, my gosh.
And I ended up having Mark a conversation with his dad. And his dad wanted to know, what happened, what was going on. And this was a real pivotal moment for me because he basically begged me to get the heck out of New York, and get the heck out of being a bike messenger.
Right, because of what had happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And I knew it, too. It's not a job that you can continue going. So about this time, I was 24 years old, and I was really trying to take stock of my life at that point, figuring out what I wanted to do and what I wanted to have. And I knew, Mark, that I wanted to wear flip-flops, shorts, have a swimming pool, and a muscle car in a garage, and none of that was conducive to New York City, right?
You're not anything close to that today.
I know. Well, I do have the muscle car in the garage and the pool.
Yeah, there you go.
Just not the flip-flops, I guess. But anyways, and the other thing that I was looking at is that I saw my dad's career. My dad was in insurance and investments, and he had a great career, and there were 2 what I would refer to as the critical subjective commodities of time and money. Mm-hmm. In my mind, those are 2 commodities that are critical, at least at the subjective level.
Yep.
And so he had this time, he had this money, and from his business. And I thought, that's what I want. I want time and money at the end of the day.
Right.
So that brought me back to Arizona at 24 years old, starting at basic insurance investments. And then after about a couple of years, I thought, what the heck am I doing in Tucson? Now, don't get me wrong. I love Tucson. Tucson's awesome, right?
Okay. Yep.
But after spending 4 years in New York City,
that's a big drop off.
Yeah, it is. It really is. So I then started looking at my options again, wanting to wear flip flops and shorts. I was like, okay, well, where the heck can I go? And that's what really brought me up here to Phoenix. And I said, you know what, Phoenix feels right to me. And I've been here in Phoenix now since 2004. Been here 15 years and love it. So there's a little bit of the Kent Welborn story how I ended up here.
So how about the whole acting side?
Yeah.
How did that whole thing take place?
The whole acting thing was, like I said, I started doing it in high school, and it was something that I was just really good at or felt good. Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, acting also was a way for me to express and experience things that normally you just can't do.
Right.
And you can really step into somebody else's character and skin and all that stuff. And what's funny is I did take a break for about 10 years. So from the time I moved out of New York to Arizona, I stopped acting. I mean, I was working my butt off when I got into business. Sure. Yeah, I mean, I was working 50, 60-hour weeks and I didn't even take my first vacation for 8 years. Right. That's how much I was working in the beginning. And so finally, after I got a bunch of designations, I was 10 years in the business, I said, I'm going to get back involved with this. And so I've been doing community theater now in Phoenix since 2007. It's how I met my wife, Heidi. Caught her on
lovely.
stage. She is lovely.
Yep, I remember when that all took place.
Yep, she definitely played hard to get, but my persistence paid off. It not only paid off in business, but it paid off in my relationship too. So I finally won her heart.
Yep.
And yeah, so we have a great time, and it's one of the ways that I feel like I'm able to give back to the community and inspire people to really, when they see a show, my goal is if they can walk away transformed and taken away from their world and wrapped up in the world that I create on stage. If I can give them that level of escapism, to me, that's just beautiful.
Right. So let me ask you this. How much of that experience do you infuse into what you do every day in finance and business? I mean, I'm sure you take some of that direction, don't you?
Totally. A large part of what I do is communicating with people on a regular basis. I do some speaking engagements for professionally speaking, but most of my interaction is day to day with people, having 2-3 meetings a day, and there is a lot of that presence that you take on, and
when you're on stage,
and it's not that it's
you're just
fake
on a
or
different
false.
stage.
It's just a different stage, exactly. And for really probably the first few years of my career, I treated it like an acting job, because you gotta figure I was a bike master in New York City. Like, I had no college education, no skills. I had a ton of fear around what they call the imposter syndrome. Have you heard of that before?
Yeah. Absolutely. I had the same problem because I didn't finish college.
That's right.
And I'm dealing with all these highly qualified architects that are with master's degree that were my subordinates.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they were older and smarter, and I was their boss.
Absolutely.
You feel like the imposter.
You really do feel that, and you feel like somebody's just going to take the cane out, and yank you off the stage and say, "What are you doing there?" So I mean, it's definitely a part that's ingrained into my daily life and really helped me survive and prosper in the first few years of my career.
Interesting. So, do you have a degree?
No,
you don't.
I do not.
You and I are the same.
I have no college degree. I actually went to ASU, and this was a few years ago, and I thought, well, I've got to have enough credits from community college and then also my credentialing. So as a certified financial planner, accredited estate planner.
Yeah, so you took all the exams. You've done all the stuff.
Totally. I've got all those. And so I go in there and they're like, you need, I think it was something like 120 hours of college credit or something. And I had like 150. I was like, okay, well, give me my degree.
Right.
And they're like, well, wait a minute.
Doesn't all add up the right way.
No, it doesn't, because half of them are in acting, half of them are in finance. You got to do all this gen ed. And I just said, I'm going to
You could have been a politician with those credentials.
I totally could have. So, no degree, just a bunch of designations. And I will say this, too, about, I don't know if you experienced this at all, Mark, but because I didn't have the college education, it made me work that much harder.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Right?
I wasn't going to let anyone prove me wrong.
Totally.
Yeah, I worked my butt off, just like you, for many years. I still work my butt off.
Yeah.
I still have that fear. It's different.
Right.
And it's not about being an imposter, because I've obviously earned my credentials. But I think that just has gotten so ingrained in my way of doing things that I'm never going to let them catch up to me.
Yeah. Totally. It's almost like there's this, it used to be in the beginning, the fear of, am I going to make my mortgage payment?
Right.
And I remember in the very beginning, like, scrounging for gas money or a vet bill.
Right.
Now I don't have that fear, but I still have the fear that keeps me on the edge, which is I never want to become irrelevant.
Right.
I never want to get to a point where I'm not bringing the best and brightest ideas to the table. So that's what keeps me on edge
keeps
now
you motivated
all the time. And so I think I've just been wired in this way of like, I've got to do.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. And, I've heard some great quotes about fear, and sometimes success lies right on the other side of fear. Sometimes you need to run towards fear, then run away from fear.
Yeah.
And I think I've been trying to embrace that more. It's like, as you move further and further up the food chain, it's like, what is it I'm afraid of now that I need to overcome?
Yeah.
And then just, okay, I gotta do this. I gotta try this. Podcast is a good example.
There you go.
And I'm having fun with it now, but I still, at first, it was pretty fearful.
I bet it was.
But it's just one of those things. It's not like it's going to change the world for me, but it's just, I'm always trying to do something like pizza the other day.
Yeah.
I never made a pizza on my own, really, in a pizza oven, and it was a disaster, you know. But the third one was perfect.
Yeah, there you go.
So
third time's a charm.
Third time's a charm.
Yeah.
Like marriage. See, you're smart there. I'm on marriage number 3, as many of you know, and third time's definitely the charm for me on this one. But fear could have stopped you right there.
It totally could have,
especially after the second one.
I tell my wife that the second time's a charm for me because this is my second marriage.
Okay, so there you
but
go.
for her, the first time's a charm
Yes.
because this is Heidi's first marriage.
This is how it's going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, it's interesting about the fear because I would say in the beginning that was one of the largest motivators I had was the fear of failure.
Yep.
Because if I think back to that time when I'm 24 years old, 25 years old, my first marriage just ended.
Right.
It was very short, but it ended. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I failed at being a husband. I didn't go to college, so I failed at that.
Yeah.
I didn't become a famous actor. So I have those fears,
Yeah.
and those fears I internalized and created a narrative in my mind, Mark, where it just drove me not to get a fourth failure.
Right.
And that I would say for the first 10 years, that was the strongest motivator in my career. Now, eventually I transitioned into something more positive to motivate me.
Right.
But those first few years, it was like, no way am I going to fail at this.
No, I know exactly what you mean. That's exactly how it was for me. I mean, it was virtually the same.
Yeah.
Virtually the same thing. So it's hard to go back and put yourself into that mindset of where you were at that point, isn't it? And you look back and you just go, how did I even get through it?
Yeah.
It was so difficult.
Yeah.
And so it just tears you down.
It really does.
You're just like, God, the whole marriage, because I was raised Catholic, and you don't think about divorce. Divorce isn't an option.
Not at all.
And to go through that was just so hard for me. And I went to therapy. I learned a lot about myself, and I think it was a great opportunity. And now I look back, what I did with that fear and what I did with that failure.
Yeah.
So I think that's the key is what do you do with it?
Right.
Because everyone's going to fail.
Absolutely.
And if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough, I say.
Yeah.
But it's what you do with the failure that makes the difference, don't you think?
I think so. And I think it has to do a lot with what you tell yourself. Because to this day, one of my biggest challenges is still that voice in your head, right?
That voice.
Because and that's why I do a lot of meditation. And I have to shut that off.
Yeah.
Because if I start listening to that, I go down this rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And so I have to create daily routines and do the right thing and just get into that mindset where I know I'm approaching things with a clear, crisp mind and I'm not listening to the noise.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, tell us about your daily routine. Let's transition to that real quick.
For sure. So wake up every morning.
Yep.
Cup of coffee.
Yep.
Sit on the porch if the weather's nice. Drink my cup of coffee and just quiet my mind.
Right.
And I get into, do you know transcendental meditation?
I've read about it.
Yeah, so I do transcendental meditation for about 15, 20 minutes every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And mind you, I have not looked at my phone at this point.
Right.
I refuse to look at my phone.
Start that way.
Exactly. I don't want to look at email. I don't want to look at news.
It's just clutter.
Exactly.
Right.
And so after I do my transcendental meditation, I then we have 2 dogs.
Mm-hmm.
One is a cattle dog, Aussie cattle dog that has a ton of energy.
Yeah.
So I started running, and I take her for a 20-minute run every single day.
Which is meditative also.
It is. And after I have meditated and I've gone and done some exercise, I feel a world of difference.
Right. You've done something for yourself.
For myself, and what I refer to this is it's an inoculation, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
I think that in this day and age, especially for a profession like mine, where I have to be tapped into the news, politics, the market, I have to inoculate myself so that I can hold space and be present for my clients that need me.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because I've been prone to go into my studio and turn on CNBC right away.
Right.
It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, and the world is ending. You turn on the news.
Oh,
and
every day.
Every day, the world is ending.
Every day, the world's ending.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. And we have to inoculate ourselves from that. And, one thing and I did not get this idea of like the exercise and meditation. Sure. There is a gentleman, Sean Acker. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He's got a great TED Talk. I caught it one time. And he said, if you do these 5 things every single day, it'll make an immense impact in your life. So one is exercise.
Right.
The other one is meditation.
Right.
The third is journaling.
Yeah.
The fourth is being grateful. And the fifth is an act of kindness.
Yeah.
A random act of kindness.
You hit all
said,
my
if
push
you do
buttons
those
right there.
5, you're in good shape. So that's what I try to incorporate throughout my day, is just being grateful and, find that random act of kindness and whatnot.
I mean, there's so much to be grateful for if you sit and think about it.
There is.
It's all around you.
Yes.
And I think so many people like to focus on the problems in their life and the frustrations and, and they get caught into, like you said, that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And it's like, it doesn't get you anywhere.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't improve your situation. But if you do just what you said, and that's what I've been doing now is the scorecard. Is I do a personal scorecard every day of how many acts of kindness can I do in a day? Or
That's
how many
awesome.
positive things can I do in a day? And I try to keep score. And I go, okay, today was a great day. I got 12 acts of kindness in. I got 12 acts of positivity.
Yeah.
And it's like working out. The more you do it, the better you get at it.
And it becomes easy. It's no longer a chore.
Yeah, it's just all around. It's just who you become.
Yeah.
And I think what I keep trying to tell people is like, imagine if everybody did that.
Yeah. The world would be a much
different place.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but it's that easy.
It really is.
It's those, everyone's looking for this big, act.
Right.
It's the little tiny acts that additively add up to the big act.
And what I find is when I'm making a change to my routine, because I haven't done this since the beginning of time. Right. I've had different routines. This is just what's working for me right now.
Your routine is very similar to mine.
I tell you, if you just do it for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Like Heidi and I, we picked up guitars this summer.
Right.
And somebody said, just play for 5 minutes a day for, I think it was a month is what it was.
Yeah.
And
I hear
said,
the 66-day thing is what I hear from a lot of people.
There you go. Maybe it was 66 days, but I stopped after a month. I don't know. But, I just did it for 5 minutes a day, and I was like, this is really fun, and it's not as intimidating.
Right.
Because sometimes you might look at it and think, oh, gosh,
gotta
playing
eat
the
whole
guitar
elephant.
and, yeah.
Take a little bite.
Just a little bit. And those little things that you can do can really dramatically improve, in my opinion, the trajectory of your life and your thinking and your way of being.
It makes a huge, huge difference. So let's get back to business a little bit. You're in the finance business. You've been helping our company with something that I think is definitely needed in a lot of companies out there. I think there's a lot of companies that are started by sole proprietors, and they have no real exit strategy. And the business, they get to a certain age, either get sick or they die, or they just close shop because they have no one to really transition the business to, right? And you've been very instrumental in helping our company make this transition and we've been kind of finding our way. It's not been a straight path.
Always is a curvy path.
It's always a curvy path, right? That's the other thing people always like, well, I just want to get from point A to point B. Well, let me tell you, it's going to be a curvy path.
Yep.
But I've enjoyed the curvy path and what we're learning along the way. And you've been setting up this great method for us to transition from me being 100% owner to my 3 partners, and over a period of time that I can transition out. Our clients don't, feel this big instant shift.
Yep.
And it's been great. And you've pulled together other professionals on the legal side.
Gotta get the team.
And my accountant, and you guys have all worked as a great team in putting this all together. And want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So succession plan. Actually, I'll preface this by saying that what I'm experiencing right now in the industry, there's a couple of things I could speak to, but one in particular that resonates with where you're at right now or where you've been at is the succession planning. You have millions of baby boomers, Mark, that have literally transformed the landscape of America as they have moved along in this giant bubble of millions of people, of consumers. You're now at a point where the baby boomers are shifting from this wealth accumulation phase to wealth distribution phase.
Right.
And part of that is this closely held business market space that I specialize in, where you have a lot of baby boomers, people in their 50s and 60s that have worked their lives creating a business.
And there's a lot of them out there.
A ton of them out there. And most of them do not have a clear path defined for them.
No.
And so what I find in the succession planning work that we're doing that's very effective, I look at succession planning like a two-sided coin, if you will. On one side, you have the what if. What if something happens to Mark?
Right.
What if something happens to Evelyn or Meredith or Vivian? You have to have these contingency plans. Exactly. So that's one side of the coin, if you will. And on that side, that's really where the buy-sell comes into play, where, hey, what happens if somebody dies or becomes disabled or gets a divorce or retirement? And, I'll sit down with a lot of business owners and they think, oh, well, I've got that.
Yeah.
It's like, well,
you really don't.
You don't. You have an operating agreement that gives a first right of refusal.
Right.
But a buy-sell will actually bind two parties to buy and sell.
Sure.
And it gives so much more confidence around the transition under the what if. So that's the what if side.
Yep.
Then the other side of the coin is the lifetime exit strategy. Who am I going to sell my business to? When am I going to sell that? How am I going to sell that business? What does that look like? What the heck am I going to do once I sell the business?
Yeah.
Am I going to stay on board for a little bit, or am I going to go sit on the beach and drink Mai Tais? You know, figuring out all of that stuff is really interesting.
Hard.
It is. And that one is definitely takes a lot more thinking. There's much more subjective data that goes into the output of that one, if you will. And so what I find is that if you can develop a roadmap for individuals and say, look, all right, if you get out at this point, are you going to be in a good position? Are you going to be able to leave a legacy for your family and provide for yourself? Great. If that works, then let's work back into that and say, who is going to be the people? Is it somebody in the business? Is it a third party? Is it maybe a son or daughter family member? And then figure out the how, and looking at things from the perspective of what's the most efficient way to transfer this business.
Yeah.
So it's really exciting stuff to work people through that.
Yeah, and we're trying to do it so not only is it me transitioning to my three partners, but setting up the mechanism to allow them to then transfer it down the road. So you have to reinvent the wheel a third time.
Absolutely.
You know,
you get some perpetuity going on there.
And I think that's really fun. I think the part that you didn't mention that I've been struggling with is the emotional side of it.
Oh, yeah.
Because this has been my baby.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean that Vivian and Meredith and Evan haven't had a part in creating what we've created, because they obviously have.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you create something from nothing, you have this emotional heartstring to it that's hard to detach yourself from. And so you can set up the numbers and you can set up the operating agreement and the buy-sell agreement, but you still have to deal with the emotional side.
You do.
Of that whole equation.
You do.
And that's been hard for me, because I'm trying to step back, and then I see something being done. And it's like, well, that's not quite how I would do it, but you know, maybe I should just let them do it and figure it out.
That's tough too.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard. You're so used to being on the field and being in the game. It's hard to say, you know, go sit on the sideline and just kind of coach.
Yeah.
Because you want to be out there. You want to play. It's like acting. You want to be on the stage. You don't want to just, you know, hey, do this next time and do that.
It's hard to go from quarterback to owner of the team.
Yeah.
It's just a really
the John Elway syndrome.
Yeah, you know, totally.
It's not easy.
It's not easy.
No.
And you know what you might find works for you is worked for some other clients where it's a maybe limited capacity that you just stay on, and there's some people that just stay on indefinitely to the day they die.
That's probably what I will do is I've got it structured now where I'll stay about 25%.
Yeah.
After the first 8 years, I'm going to try to get down to 25%.
Yep.
And then after that, stay 25% for as long as I can, I guess. But, you know, I've got these other interests that I'm trying to pursue.
Totally.
It's nice to let them, you know, take the reins, and they're doing such a great job that, you know, for me, it's like, okay, go paint. Go finish that painting. Go finish the book you've been talking about for the last 20 years.
And it doesn't mean that you can't be the best mentor to those women.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, that could be a very critical component of the succession plan is your mentorship there.
I think if you look at the demographics of this country, you know, by 2030 or something, I found out there'll be more people over 60 than under 60.
Isn't that something?
I mean, that's crazy if you think about
That's the baby boomers.
So we are going to be the mentors, you know, to this younger generation, and there aren't going to be as many of them.
Yeah.
And so I just think how that whole dynamic's going to shake out is going to be really fascinating.
I would say so.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the things that you would advise someone young that wants to get into what you're doing?
Yeah, I would say
you took the hard road.
I did. I took the hard road. My gosh, I cold called. That is like the worst thing in the world.
I could never do that.
When I showed up back in Tucson, I was sitting there going, okay, so like my dad has basically picked up every family member and friend as a client, except for, you know, maybe some of my closest high school friends.
Right.
Most of those guys were still living at home and delivering pizzas. It's like they weren't the best prospects in the world. So I would definitely encourage people not to cold call. I would say that for a young person getting into the business, one of the biggest things that helped me was aligning yourself with a great company.
Yeah.
So
Great organization, good systems.
Great organization, great systems, so that way you don't have to reinvent anything.
Right.
One. Number two, you can tap into that for confidence.
Right.
So, because when you're getting into this and you're asking somebody to give you $1 million to manage or whatever,
Right.
I mean, my gosh, you it's nice to be able to hang your hat on something.
Sure, absolutely.
So I would definitely look at that. I would also look at getting a mentor. See if you can find a mentor, just like what we're talking.
That's
how
what
you're
we're
going to
talking
mentor
about.
the ladies. It's the same thing with somebody new coming in. Absolutely, get a mentor would be one. So in summary, great company, organization, and gain a mentor would be what I would recommend.
Okay, so then, how old did you say you were again?
I'm 45.
45. So as you start moving towards that 60 and beyond,
God, I can't believe that's happening.
well, I'll just tell you, from 45 to 60, it'll go really fast.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the 20 to 45 seems like a long time.
we haven't
but the
even
next-
had our kid yet. Like,
Yeah.
oh gosh.
Now, when are you going to have your child?
Well, God willing, we'll see if it happens. It hasn't happened yet, but it's in the books. That's one of the things.
She's not pregnant yet.
She's not pregnant
Okay.
yet. I have
thought
to
you
put
had
it out
some
on this
big- I thought you had some
podcast.
big news for me.
Guess what, everybody on the podcast? I'm going to.
Well, I know you guys were trying in Spain.
Yeah,
I mean, I could hear you next. No, I'm just joking.
It wasn't for a lack of trying that we're not pregnant.
So that'll change you more than anything. That's all I can tell you.
I can imagine
Is
so.
That's the one thing that you can get out of marriages, but you ain't getting out of your kids.
Yeah, right?
Yep.
That's
So
true.
as you get towards those ages
Yeah.
and you become a father, let's just say,
Yeah.
what are some of the things that goes through your mind about all of that?
What do you mean exactly?
Well, like, I'm sure you've envisioned yourself being a father.
Sure.
And what that's going to be like to be a father. And what it's going to be like to be a father. I mean, if you're 45, you're going to have teenagers when you're 60, like me, okay?
Yeah,
See my hairline? See your hairline?
Yeah, totally.
Enjoy it. That's all
Yeah.
I can say. And hopefully you don't have daughters because they're even tougher.
Oh, boy, look out.
But I love them to death. So do you think about that? Do you think of being a father?
Yeah, I totally do. In fact, I think as part of, I mean, because let's face it, you don't get to be, because I married Heidi 3 years ago, so you don't take this long break from marriages 1 and 2 of 15 years without a certain level of what I would call immaturity.
Sure.
Yep. So there was a lot of work I had to do. One of the organizations I'm involved with is the Mankind Project. And it talks about, they really promote accountability and integrity with men in the community because we don't really have a lot of good role models and there's not a lot of accountability in our society. So I did a lot of work with them in that organization. Awesome. Yeah, it was. And one of the exercises that I pulled from that was journaling about being the type of father that I wanted to be.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so
you've been working at this.
I have. And Mark, I tell you, I had to do this in order to feel confident enough to even go down that road.
Right.
Because otherwise, I mean, I think some people, they're like, you get pregnant, whatever, you get pregnant. But to me, I'm like, oh, my God, if I get pregnant.
It's a huge responsibility.
Well, I wouldn't get pregnant, but my wife would get pregnant. And where are we going to do
You're
with this
both getting
kid?
pregnant, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Right. She may be doing all the work, but you're getting pregnant too. But yeah, I think that's awesome that you taking the time and the seriousness of that responsibility and that role.
Yeah, and just writing down what are the values that I want to instill in my child,
right?
And how do I want them to be? Now, I will also say this: that I have a tendency to project out in the future and just steamroll down the path.
That's your business.
Right? It totally is. And Heidi will even call me out on this. Like, you're already figuring out, what orthodontist our teenager is going to go to. We haven't even had him yet. Like, what's going on, Kent?
Well, that's important.
It is, right?
Yeah,
I would have my entire life mapped out, let me tell you, by noon every single day.
So you kind of started to tell the story of how you met Heidi. I thought that was a
pretty interesting story. Yeah. That's a good one for sure. So, it was 2010. And I went to this show, and there Heidi was on stage, and I was really struck by her. Very beautiful and very talented actress. So right away, there were some boxes being checked off in my world, And nothing came of it, but about, I want to say, 6 months later, we were cast in a reading. Now, a reading is just where you get around a table and you read a play once, so there isn't a lot of hanging out that you do like a normal rehearsal process of a show. But we did have an opportunity to chat a little bit, and I definitely made my attempt to interest her and engage her with my peacock feathers and whatnot, and she wasn't having it.
Yeah, it wasn't working.
No, it did not work. She basically said, you were pretty much a Scottsdale douchebag, which I thought was funny because I didn't even live in Scottsdale. But no wonder. So, and then fast forward a few years later, we get cast in this show called Mary's Wedding, which is a beautiful piece. It's a 2-person show, so it's just the two of us.
Wow.
No intermission, lights up, lights down, 90-minute production.
Wow.
Just the two of us on stage, so you can imagine all the rehearsal time we had for that.
Yeah.
Plenty of time for Kent to make his moves, right?
Yeah.
Well, within about a month or two, I thought, she's pretty feisty. She's like really independent, and she can be kind of annoying sometimes and rude, and I don't even think I like this woman that much. I don't even think I want to have sex with her.
Yeah.
So we progressed down the rehearsal process, and I would say this rehearsal process was 6 months long.
Wow.
And by the time we got to the show opening, what I found is that, my gosh, I have enjoyed hanging out with her and developed a relationship. And it was one of the first times, Mark, that I had actually developed a real friendship with somebody rather than... and
just
it's
having
not
the hots.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly. And that made a huge difference. And so we just kind of, once the show closed, said, hey, do you want to keep hanging out? And I knew within about 2 months of the show closing and 2 months of us dating that I was going to marry her. And I'd never had that feeling before with any other woman I'd been with.
Interesting. Well, we got to know both of you a whole lot better on our Spain trip this year.
Well, for the days we showed up, we were sick for half of it.
Well, we all kind of rotated on the sickness on that
we
trip.
We were sharing that, weren't we?
Oh, my gosh. It was a tough one. But we still managed to have a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was a great trip.
Yeah,
that really was.
Great group of people. And
it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, the food was amazing. And, one thing I'll say about my world travel, and I know that you do a ton of it too, obviously, Mark, but every time I go somewhere, I always pull something from life, if you will, and especially if I go to like a third world country or something, you just see how people live and operate, and it just really makes me feel or gives me a higher sense of compassion.
Sure.
And also just appreciation for what we have.
Yeah, we have so much in this country.
Oh my God, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's not like Spain is poor,
right?
But you still come back and you go, we've got it made here, man.
Oh yeah, their unemployment is through the roof. Yeah. I mean, it's
and
hard.
Our conveniences. You go in a grocery store here, there's everything.
You don't even need to go to a grocery store here. You hit a button on your phone.
Hit a button on your phone now.
Yeah, that's right.
It's crazy. So that was a fun trip, and it was great getting to know Heidi too. So we're looking forward to having you guys.
Yeah, definitely
come over for dinner at some point. We got to get you over here. You like to cook too, don't you?
A little bit.
A little bit.
Heidi's more of the cook than I am.
Heidi's more of the cook.
Yeah,
okay.
I grill stuff on the grill and try not to overcook the red meat, which I tend to do. But
all right. So you see all kinds of approaches to acquiring and serving wealth in your business.
Mm-hmm.
What have you seen in particular that seems to work for people?
Yeah, good question. I would say...
Just in a broad sense.
Yeah.
Specifics, but...
No, totally. I would say that what works well for people is, one, having a plan.
Yeah. Kind of works in architecture that way, too.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like, have a plan. It doesn't mean that the plan can't change, but just have a plan and have some discipline to that plan.
Right.
The next thing I would say is, if you can turn off the noise... There's so much. We live in a day and age we are bombarded with information, and a lot of
most of it's fake news,
right? Or a lot of it's negative.
Yeah,
there can be negative spins on things.
Yep. It all depends on who you're listening to,
right? Or there could be egos, like you go to a cocktail party and somebody wants to brag about something they're doing financially. So, I would say take the emotion out of your investing and whatnot. And then the third thing I would say is diversify. I haven't met one single person that solely did one thing.
Right.
I mean, they may be very successful in, say, real estate, but that doesn't mean that all they have is one type of real estate or one real estate property. Right. You diversify whatever you do. Yeah, exactly.
No one's got that good of a batting average.
That's right.
Despite what they might tell you.
And the last thing I would say is align yourself with professionals, just as you have with the professionals that are at your table and working with you. You want to make sure that you've got a really good CPA, a good wealth manager or financial planner, a great attorney. And if you have that team of people, to help you with the plan that
Sure.
you've designed, or your professionals to help you design, and you don't get caught up in the emotions and you stay
Yeah.
diversified. Those things right there, that will really do it for you.
Makes a big difference. But I definitely agree that you have to find the right people in those professions. Just because
Yeah.
someone's an attorney doesn't mean they're great. Or
Yes.
I find that people assume that if you've got an attorney, there's a lot of bad attorneys.
You're right.
There's a lot of great attorneys. There's a lot of great financial planners. There's a lot of horrible financial.
Yes.
There's a lot of good architects. There's a lot of bad architects.
Right.
So you still have to sort it all out.
Yep.
And it's tough sometimes. I've had some bad financial people.
Yeah.
Horrible. Let's put it that way.
Right.
So I know the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say that, you find those people that are able to be empathetic and
Right.
understand you.
Right.
And then be able to reach within their bag, if you will, and
Right.
see what they can provide to help you reach your goals, rather than say, not to pick on the attorneys, but there's some attorneys out there that just say, well, what do you want? I'll
Right.
take the order.
Right.
But you want somebody who can engage in a dialogue and a conversation and provide some ideas to you.
Well, and I think for me, what struck me about you was I felt that you cared about me. I felt like you cared about helping me achieve my goals.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a commission to you,
Right.
and that made a big difference for me.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It was totally what struck me about you.
I transitioned probably 10 years ago when I was all in my head and had all that fear and didn't want to fail. And I finally was able to let that go. And I create a mantra. And I say this to myself every time I go into a meeting with a client. And it's breathe, relax,
Right.
listen,
Listening
understand, help, and inspire.
Yeah.
And it has to happen in that order when you think about it, because if you want to be able to relax, you have to breathe.
Right.
Then you can relax. And if you want to be able to listen to somebody, you have to relax your mind and your
Right.
body to really listen to them.
Absorb.
Yeah.
In order to absorb.
And if you want to understand where somebody is and what their life is walking around in their shoes, you
Sure.
have to be able to listen to them.
Right.
And to understand them, the only way that you're going to be able to help them and inspire them is if you truly understand them. So that's why I go through each one of those thoughts right before I walk
I think
in.
that's really good. How do you relax?
So I would say, well, one, going to Spain with my buddy Mark is
that
one
was
way.
fun.
World travel is definitely high on the list there. But you only get to do that once, or I only get to do that once a year, maybe twice a year if I'm lucky. So, and I do not go a week without looking at my email. I might go 2 days, maybe 3 days, but I am connected. So for me, a large part of the relaxing is that daily routine.
Yeah, that morning ritual that you do.
Yep, I inoculate myself. That's really huge. Some of the other things I love to do, like obviously the acting.
Right.
I love muscle cars. Been tinkering around with an old muscle car
It's
lately. So I do those
So you
things.
get absorbed in the mechanics and the deal of that, and it takes your mind off everything.
It really does. And, I pride myself in not being an expert in these things. Like, I'm not an expert in meditation. I'm not an expert in working on muscle cars. I mean, I've screwed up so many times on my muscle car where I've had to take it to the mechanic. But exactly. It's the doing it. It's the getting my hands dirty. It's working on the car. It's turning the wrenches. It's just the act of
turning your
going through.
mind off the other things and putting your mind on something like that.
You got it. That is to me a great way to relax. Drink a beer in the garage, tinker around, and I'm a happy cat.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, and it was funny because Isabel got me that barbecue I showed you, that pizza oven, and I'm notoriously not a good mechanical person. Give me wrenches, I'm like, which end of this do I use?
Righty tighty, lefty loosey.
But I took what you just said. I set up all the parts in the garage. I grabbed a cold beer. I had the butt crack going, and it was fun. And I put the whole damn thing together.
Yeah, there you go. And it felt good, didn't it?
It felt so good. I mean, I had more fun putting that pizza oven together than making that first pizza. To be honest,
well, from what I heard about that first pizza, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, but that's But I tell you what, it was just so great to take my mind off everything and do something that I am just not good at.
Yeah.
And succeed at it.
Totally.
So it's not, again, finding some monumental thing to give your mind that exercise.
Yes.
And it's those little exercises along the way. They can be very minor, but they build up, again, to that tsunami concept.
Absolutely.
That they build your confidence. They build, and I'm like, I can put something else together next time, you know?
Totally.
So I love doing stuff like that.
I do too. It is really good just to break away and just stop the noise and the clutter in the head. It's so important to do that.
It's very important, especially in this day and age. So what are some of your biggest challenges, and what are some of your dreams and aspirations?
Yeah, so biggest challenge, it's interesting because I'm at a point in my career where I don't have to acquire a new client. I still love talking to new clients, don't get me wrong, and love engaging with new people, but it's different than it was in the beginning where I had to acquire new clients.
Right.
It was critical to my success. I would say the challenge has really shifted now to more of the emotional aspect. And it's really managing the emotions of my clients and myself too, because if I am not settled down and in the right zone, exactly. I mean, you can think about, Mark, if you were just having a bad day and you're really frustrated, and then you have maybe a client that's a little bit on the high maintenance side, give you a call and want to make a bunch of changes, it could just send you through the roof, right? So with me, it's really managing those emotions, and I think where I see really my role with people is to be that I don't want to say knight in shining armor, but that beacon, if you will, because they are so inundated. Everybody's so inundated with the headline news that they're just bombarded with, and hardly any of it's positive. And so there are people that will come to me with anxieties, and I have to learn how to
be the rock.
I do, and I have to manage
them down.
Exactly.
No, let's look at the whole situation here.
At the end of the day, an advisor, at least on the financial side, I think their biggest value that they bring to the table is really the behavior coaching. Yeah. Because
it's the same in our business, let me tell you. It's exactly the same thing. People just panic. Oh, my God, look at this. Is all. So, no, let's hold on.
And they'll end up hurting themselves if they panic.
They'll just make bad decisions.
Exactly. And if somebody makes a bad decision in my world, it could mean the difference between them being financially independent and not.
Right.
With you, it could be the difference between having their dream home and having a complete disaster that breaks them financially.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I would say the biggest challenge is really that. And then the negative, just even to this day, I would love to sit here and tell you, Mark, that through all my work, all my self-realization work and my work with Mankind Project and, just my successes I've had in my career, that I'm good.
Yeah.
But I'm not. I'm a great guy, but I'm not at this point where, it's not like you hit the gym really hard for 6 months, get in the best shape of your life. You got a six-pack and you're ripped, done. And then you start loading up on pizza and beer saying, I did it. I'm good. It's the same thing with me now where I'm like, just from an emotional standpoint, I still have to put those fears like, oh my gosh, what did I just say? What's going on? Oh, I should have done this. I should have done that. You should have all over yourself if you're not careful, right? Yeah. So that I'd say is the biggest challenge.
There's just so many opportunities to constantly keep improving where you are.
Mm-hmm.
You may have started way down here and you're way up here now.
Yeah.
But once you're up here, you tend to see what's ahead.
I know.
And you go, well, I could be up here.
Yes.
Look what I did, but why don't I do that here? I guess we're just people that don't like to get comfortable.
Yeah.
I'm not going to just start eating pizza because I got the 6-pack. Like
totally. Right.
It's like, man, I want the 8-pack now.
It's so funny because when I was in New York City and I was really taking a look at my life and thinking, what does Kent need to live?
Right.
I remember thinking and saying to myself, if I made, now granted, this was back in 1999 when I was leaving New York, but if I could just make $50,000 a year, I'd be loaded. And now I'm like, wow.
That's how it changes.
Yeah, exactly.
So looking back on your life and your career, would you do anything differently now?
I would and I wouldn't. So I would say, looking back, I see that the first decade was just I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail.
Right.
But now I can look at that and say that really served a purpose.
Yeah, you learned a lot.
I did, and it made me work really hard. So, if you'd asked me this question 15 years ago, I probably would have said I wish I'd gone to college.
Right.
But now I can look at that and really recognize the blessing of not having a formal education and how it really drove me to work harder. So, I from this standpoint, on this precipice, looking back at my life, I would say I wish that I had not worried so damn much.
That's one thing I tell people too, is like, We worry over things. 99% of the things we worry about never happen.
Never.
I mean, it's just a big waste of energy and time.
It really is.
And that's one thing I've learned over the years, and I try now. I've gotten much, much better at it. I don't worry about things too much anymore.
Yeah.
For me, it's like, okay, I'm 60. How bad is it going to get? And I don't know. Like you said, most things just don't happen. And so I try just to block that out and just say, you know what? Let's just focus on what I need to do. And if I do that right, everything's going to work out.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, then I'll go from there. I'll go from that point. But I'm not going to sit here and worry about all these hypotheticals. It's a big waste of time. I know so many people, they get so lost in the hypotheticals and the worry. And it's like, put that energy towards your goal and not over here.
There's a great book by Ryan Holiday called The Obstacle is the Way. Have you heard of that?
No, but I've been reading stuff about Ryan Holiday. I've been hearing stuff about him.
It's great.
Pick it up. Just on a podcast that I listened to a few days. He's amazing.
So he embodies this philosophy that dates back to the meditations of Marcus Aurelius. And
that's where I heard it. He was talking about Marcus Aurelius.
And it's there's even the book Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, which is basically
his
his
favorite
journals.
book.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the idea is that they're with the people back of that time, that they surrendered to the idea that there were things that were just out of their control.
Right.
So one, why worry about it?
Right.
But number two, and this is more important, because there's a lot of people that could just say, well, why worry about it? Let's just, get high,
worry about
drink,
anything.
and,
Yeah, that's the other extreme of that
exactly.
thinking. Yeah, exactly.
But with this, he takes the approach of not to worry about, because there's nothing you can do about these things.
Right.
But then number two, how can you use this obstacle for leverage to not just succeed and get through the challenge, but to even become better?
Yeah.
And to me, that mindset is just, I find it remarkable. And he's got all these little snippets and stories in there about people that have overcome things. And I just think that approach is a great way to go.
Yeah, no, I just heard about this book. He was on, like I said, a podcast a few weeks ago. So I always find when I hear like something like this, like 2 or 3 times in a given,
like, I got to see it now.
Well, no, it's a message to me.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, God's telling me I need to get this book for a reason I don't even know yet.
Totally.
But so I've learned to really listen to those things in life too, because they're all around you, and I think a lot of times we just miss them.
I think so.
And boy, it makes a big difference.
Another one too is Mark Divine. Have you heard of him?
I haven't heard of this one.
So Mark Divine is a guy who ended up going down the corporate path in life, and then realized, hey, wait a minute, I don't think this is what I want to do. Then he became a Navy SEAL, and he was able to take both of those elements, both the strenuous physical and mental talent it takes to survive being a Navy SEAL, but then also the corporate world. And he came out of the SEAL program, and he's run a couple of different companies. Like one is the Coronado Brewing Company he was the CEO of. But he has an approach where your mind, you basically have, and one of the stories in there is a good wolf and a bad wolf.
Interesting.
So you got the bad wolf in there that you can feed with negative thoughts all day long. Or you can decide to ignore the bad wolf and feed the good wolf.
Right.
And just feed it with positive thoughts all the time.
Right.
But he's another one that's got some remarkable stuff just in terms of how you frame your mind and approach things in life.
Well, and they're proving it now with quantum physics that this stuff actually does have a scientific way of working.
Yep.
So there's definitely something to it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's to me, it's great when I'm around people like you that live that, understand it,
live it and breathe it.
Oh, it's awesome. It makes such a difference. So let me ask you, how do we get a hold of you? How do we find you?
Yeah. So KentWelborn.com is the best way to get a hold of me through work, if you will, or professional. The other thing I'll put in a plug for is the Theater Artist Studio.
There you go.
So Theater Artist Studio, and I think it's theaterartiststudio.org, I believe, but you can Google it and find it. That is where Heidi and I do most of our theater. And just to put in a quick plug, we are opening up a new show called The Trip to Bountiful, which opens November 22nd, runs to December 15th on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, and it's a great little show. So
get me info.
I definitely will.
Sign Isabella and I up. because we would love to see something like that.
Yeah, you guys would,
with the two of you.
Yeah, and it's a great mid-century piece written by Horton Foote. Really beautiful place. So definitely, you come see me on stage, or visit the website kentwelborn.com.
Awesome. Well, great job. Thank you for doing this.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Mark.
We'll have to definitely get you back because I think we have a lot more to cover.
We got a sequel in our for sure.
We just scratched the surface today, don't you think?
I think so.
I totally think so.
This is awesome. Thanks, Mark.
Brother. You bet, man.
Take care.
Okay, great podcast. Thank you so much, Kent Welborn. That was a lot of fun. And thank you again for those whiskey glasses. Those are awesome. So anyway, I want to wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving. It's definitely one of my favorite holidays. I'm going to start cooking tonight. We're going to have some the family over and just kind of chill out. We're going to make some pizzas on the Weber Pizza Grill. And then get the turkeys prepped and brined. And we'll get them ready to go on the Traeger tomorrow. Got two turkeys we're going to put on the smoker. And then everyone else is bringing the side dishes. So we're going to have a lot of fun here. And I'll tell you what, I'm very excited to have Monogram as our sponsor. They're going to we're going to have them trick out our new office kitchen. And we'll be doing some cooking there, too. So get ready. We're making great progress. We're hoping to have everything done by the end of the year. And we'll do some cooking in Candelaria style here shortly. So have a happy Thanksgiving, everyone. And we'll see you next week on Inspiring Living. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed our podcast. We encourage you to write a review, screenshot it, and share it with your friends. Please instant message it to me and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. We thank you for listening, and we look forward to sharing more insights to inspiring living next week.